So the Chiefs handedly defeated the Lions on Sunday Night Football, winning by more than one score, yet the win had Lions players crashing out at the end of the game. Other players then took to social media to, of course, blame the refs, and the masses then proceeded to crash out again, even though the Chiefs were in control of this entire game. Well, in today's video, I'll break all that down, including Brian Branch's suspension, take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly, mostly good from this win, roster moves being made for the return of Rashee Rice, and more. But first, how about those? All right, so the Chiefs just kind of smoked the Detroit Lions at Arrowhead on Sunday Night Football as the masses once again melted down. I thought it would be a bit more of an offensive shootout on both sides, with Detroit's secondary down multiple cornerbacks, along with safety Brian Branch, more on him later, and safety Kirby Joseph. Not 100% out there. Branch is dealing with an ankle and Kirby Joseph with a knee. We'll combine that with the Lions offense averaging 35 points per game coming into this, and I had KC winning 34-31 in a shootout again, but I was definitely wrong here. This is about as much of a complete statement win as the Chiefs could possibly have. They beat one of the best teams in all of football by more than one score, and they did this by going up before halftime, never to trail again. KC had more total yards, more rushing yards, more passing yards, more first downs. They went 4 for 6 in the red zone compared to Detroit going 1 for 2. They then went 2 for 3 on fourth downs, talking about the Chiefs, compared to the Lions going 0 for 2. And every phase of the ball, offense, defense, and special teams, they executed at a higher level. One of those fourth down conversions for KC was a difference maker too. It was that touchdown pass on 4th and 3 to Xavier Worthy, who scorched Amik Robertson off the line to get open for the score. And get this, according to Sam McDowell of the KC Star, that was the first time the Chiefs have went for it on 4th and 3 or greater inside their own 30 since Mahomes became a starter. Pretty crazy, but against a team as high-powered as the Lions, you have to stay aggressive and get touchdowns rather than field goals. Now, I'm not going to lie, I did get a bit concerned a couple hours prior to this game when it was announced that Josh Simmons was questionable to play for non-injury personal reasons. It turns out he had a family emergency in California. I believe he's still there. And Andy Reid noted they did know about it in advance, but I don't think there was a lot of advance notice, but that's how emergencies go. You never plan for them. You can never predict when something emergent would happen. So Simmons was out, and Mahomes said he knew that something was up when they did their walkthrough, I believe around noon on Sunday, and Josh Simmons wasn't present. He was told by the coaches afterwards that Simmons was dealing with personal matters out of state. So of course, that had me sweating a little bit because Jalen Moore was about to make his starting debut for the Chiefs at left tackle, going up against Aiden Hutchinson, one of the best pass rushers in football. Well, guess what? He looked awesome out there, all things considered. Very little to no prep to play in this game, and the guy stepped up and played admirably. I mean, he was going up against Aiden Hutchinson half the time and only surrendered 3 pressures. That did lead the team, but again, a great game overall by him, and the only other pressure allowed along the line was Jawan Taylor on the other side with 1. Tight end Noah Gray did also allow a pressure that cost a forced fumble. Mahomes was able to dive on it, so not the end of the world, but Noah Gray was one-on-one with Aiden Hutchinson. What in the actual heck was that? Anyway, I digress about that one, but the rest of the offensive line, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Kingsley Suamataia, they allowed a combined 0 pressures. And in the last 3 games, Kingsley has only allowed 1 pressure on 130 pass blocking snaps. Kingsley is getting better every single week, and the fact that he looked as good as he did out there next to Jalen Moore rather than Josh Simmons, who he had all the rapport with up to this point, is a huge W. And get this, Next Gen Stats said that the Lions defense recorded a 17.9% pressure rate on Sunday Night Football, which was their lowest in a game since 2022, and speaks volumes to how well the O-line is protecting overall. Mahomes feels really comfortable again in the pocket, and it's just been an awesome thing that Brett Veach has done to kind of overcompensate for the issues you had last year. You got Jalen Moore on the 2-year, $30 million deal. You drafted Josh Simmons when he fell to you in round 1, and this has been a big win for the Chiefs O-line. That ultimately helps the offense a ton. And speaking of Jalen Moore, get this. His wife had their baby overnight before the game. And so Jalen was, of course, with her, having a rather restless or poor night of sleep. And hours later, this man finds out he's starting and plays his tail off to help the Chiefs get a convincing W against one of the best teams in the league. You couldn't even write a better story if you tried. Mahomes himself told the media after the game that when the O-line blocks like that, it makes his job easier. Pat said that he has all the faith in the world in Jalen Moore, and he held his own last night, and that's why the team brought him in. And it's actually crazy to think that the Chiefs' current backup left tackle in Jalen Moore is arguably better than any left tackle the Chiefs had playing for them over the last couple of years. VIDS added depth to the tackle spots, like I said, this offseason, and this offense is starting to come alive. They scored 37 against the Ravens, 28 against the Jags, one bad decision away from hanging 35 on a top 5 defense. By the way, if that pick 6 didn't happen, shout out to Devin Lloyd. He made a heck of a play. And then they put up 30 against the Detroit Lions. Mahomes had his second game in the last 3 with 4 total touchdowns. He went 22 of 30 for 257 yards and 3 scores through the air, but then had 10 carries for 32 yards. 3 of those were from victory formation. 1 was a kneel down before the half, plus that really exciting, fun rushing touchdown on an option. He was precise, decisive, very accurate, and made that Detroit defense pay time and time again. They actually intentionally stayed away from the middle of the field for the most part, and he targeted Detroit's linebackers on the outside. He actually completed 13 of his 17 passes when targeting linebackers for 165 yards and a touchdown. In all, he targeted linebackers 17 of his 30 total attempts, which was 56.7% of the time, and that's the highest rate in which Mahomes has targeted linebackers in his career. Pretty crazy. It was definitely an intentional aspect of their game plan, and it worked really well. Well, that's why you had guys like Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster absolutely feasting. Kelce had 78 yards on 6 grabs, with the guy flying all around like he's 30 again rather than 36. Juju clearly looks healthier than ever, and he made several clutch plays. I think Hollywood Brown had his best game in quite a while, definitely of the year. He had 4 grabs for 45 yards and 2 touchdowns, and while the running back room didn't light up the scoreboard from a statistical perspective, Mahomes thankfully didn't lead the room in rushing. Pacheco made some plays on the ground. I just wish he did a little bit more through the air. He had 3 targets, catching 1 of those for 0 yards, but he averaged over 4 yards a pop on the ground. Kareem Hunt was clutch again, picking up key first downs per usual, and at one point, he was evaluated in the blue tent, as was cornerback Noel Williams, but both returned to play. On the subject of injuries, Chris Jones also had his forearm looked at as it appeared to get smashed between a player and a helmet, and Kelce got his ankle rolled on from behind, and he left the field of play for a couple of snaps, but all those guys ended up returning to play, and I think from an injury perspective, they came out pretty clean, which is great news. I do have a couple of concerns along with a few more positive takeaways on defense that I'll talk about coming up next. But first, I can't wait to get out to Arrowhead this season for a Chiefs home game because there's honestly no better experience in the world. Well, that's why I got to give the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek, a huge shout out because of course that's where I get my tickets. They are the #1 rated ticketing app for a reason after all, with over 35 million downloads and more than 70,000 events listed on their site and app, which is super easy to use and honestly my preference. SeatGeek has everything you need on there too. Sports is a big one. Obviously, you got the NFL in full swing, the MLB playoffs are here, and of course the NBA isn't too far behind. But there's also concerts, comedians, festivals, basically you name it, it's probably there for you on SeatGeek. They have your back as well, with each ticket being rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. Just look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. It also helps that every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and of course, I got a code for you guys. You can use my code HBTC10 for 10% off your next set of tickets on SeatGeek. That's 10% off with promo code HBTC10 when you buy tickets on the SeatGeek app. Just make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thanks again, SeatGeek. All right, before I talk about the in-game fight, the suspension that's already been announced, and all that fun stuff, I didn't really like seeing Harrison Butker miss another extra point. It was very early on in the game, and it wasn't blocked or anything like that. I went back and rewatched it a couple of times, but that makes the 5th game out of 6 now that Harrison Butker's either missed an extra point, a field goal, or both. Credit to him for making everything else after that, and all of his kickoffs were clean too. I just hope he continues progressing in an upward direction and works through these early season struggles. Other than that, special teams was pretty solid in this one. Nico Remigio even had a nice 21-yard punt return up the left side late in the game, and that helped the Chiefs eventually get a field goal and officially put this game out of reach. The defense did struggle at times, where the Lions seemingly moved the ball with very little effort, but there were also times where they held strong, and at the end of the day, they held the number one scoring offense to just 17 points, and that is absolutely incredible here. Going up early for sure helped force the Lions into a more pass-heavy offense in the second half, something that's not as ideal for Jared Goff. Don't get me wrong, he still played a great game. He was 23 of 29 for 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. A really good game, but when you force a team even as good as the Lions to have to chase points from behind, it does make things a bit more difficult. All in all, Goff carved up the middle of the field with Nick Bolton struggling in coverage and Sam Laporta having himself a bit of a day in the middle. I like seeing Chamari Connor play a season-low number of snaps in the slot, but part of that was because Trent McDuffie played a lot more in the slot when Amon-Ra St. Brown kicked inside. St. Brown did have 9 catches on the night, but a total of 45 yards. I'm going to take that all day, every day. The run defense of the Chiefs struggled here and there, but ultimately, you held the Lions to under 100 yards on the ground for the first time since week 1. They allowed no real explosive runs either, with the long being 15 by Jahmyr Gibbs. Chris Jones is not going to pop out on the stat sheet either, but he made a bunch of impactful plays, disrupting Goff as well as the run several times. Amenahue ended up getting a sack on Goff on a key 3rd and 10 midway through the fourth quarter, and that was largely set up by Chris Jones. Omar Norman-Lott did return, but he only played 11 snaps, and hopefully we see the D-line continue to rack up more quick pressures on opposing quarterbacks, but honestly, I can't complain too much here about the defense when they held Detroit to half their average in points scored. The offense absolutely helped with this by putting up 30, and they had long, calculated, methodical drives as well, resulting in points, but this was probably the most impressive win so far, and the most complete game the Chiefs have played on every phase of the ball, offense, defense, and special teams. And then this, they played a clean game. After being flagged 13 times in the Jags game, they were actually flagged only once, but that penalty was not accepted, so they showed up on the end-game stat sheet with 0 penalties. Andy Reid said today, for the most part, the officials just let the teams play, and even Detroit was minimally penalized. There was an illegal motion on Goff to remove his touchdown catch. Aiden Hutchinson had a very obvious roughing the passer flag on Mahomes, and then there was a PI on Kelsey and a delay of game. So nothing too egregious here, but it is crazy because the Chiefs can win decisively, so by more than 1 score, but the refs are once again to blame, this time for calling too little on the Chiefs. Last week, the Chiefs were flagged 13 times, and people were still complaining that the refs were trying to help the Chiefs win. And honestly, I'm just tired of the refs thing. Lions players like Kirby Joseph were even doing the same thing online, sharing posts multiple times that the refs were favoring the Chiefs. But come on, man. You got out-coached on both sides of the ball, and you lost by more than 1 score. Let's not do the ref thing. It's actually lazy and pretty pathetic. Something else that was pathetic was the end-game punch by safety Brian Branch on Juju Smith-Schuster. He could be seen walking up straight to Juju after the last Mahomes kneel down and just clocked him right in the face. That obviously then had the teams kind of skirmish. After that, it was nothing crazy. I don't think any other punches were thrown aside from Branch punching Juju. He ripped his helmet off, a couple other things there at the end. And yeah, that was not ideal. Mahomes was clearly frustrated afterwards. It was kind of a sour ending to that game just because why? Why do you do that? And Branch told the media why, at least in his eyes, this happened. After the game, he said the Chiefs were bullying him. Out there, the refs weren't calling stuff, and he let it get the best of him. Quote, "I shouldn't have did it. It was childish." He referenced a play near the end of the game where Juju illegally blocked him in the back. That was the words of Brian Branch, okay? And after watching the play, I have no idea if it should have been flagged or not. I'm looking at arguments online. It's back and forth. Some say yes, that is a flag. Some say no, that is fine. It's not actually a block in the back. But I wouldn't have been mad if Juju was flagged for that there. The game was already over by that point, so it's whatever to me. Maybe it could have been a flag, okay? Regardless, walking up to Juju Smith-Schuster after the game and clocking him in the face, that's insane. Dan Campbell apologized to Andy Reid and Juju at the podium last night, saying what Branch did was inexcusable, and he was not cool with it at all. And you know what? I respect that from Dan Campbell because I honestly think he's a hell of a coach and has done a great job turning that franchise around. So much respect to him and honestly the Lions as a whole. I hope they can get healthy and stay healthy the back half of the season because I honestly believe injuries were the only reason why Super Bowl 59 wasn't a game between the Chiefs and the Lions. Nothing more really needs to be said about this situation. Branch was wrong. You know it. I know it. He knows it. And the NFL knows it. That's why he's getting suspended for one game by the NFL for what he did. And it was obvious that they had to do something. So that means Detroit will be without another top defensive player next week in a very important game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A fine is also probably coming as well. I mean, this guy has had multiple issues with self-control. He's been fined 13 times, probably 14 now in his short NFL career. So Brian Branch kind of had it coming, especially if you're going to do something like that at the end of the game. A suspension is well-deserved. Now, an update to this is Brian Branch is actually appealing the suspension. I don't think he's going to win, but I did want to at least mention that it was announced by everybody around the NFL circles that he is going to be appealing the suspension, so we'll see what comes from that. As for the Chiefs, they move on to 3-3 after this impressive win with a game against the Raiders at noon this Sunday at Arrowhead, and they're like 11.5-point favorites right now. Pretty crazy. They should definitely win that one. Conversation for another day, but I will say this, Rashee Rice is going to be back for this game, and the offense is heating up at the right time even without Rice. They averaged 31.7 points per game and 400 yards per game over the last 3 weeks, and Rice is only going to help them take things to another level entirely. But in order to officially bring Rice back from suspension, you have to move him from the reserve suspended list to the 53-man roster, and they did that today. Well, in order to make room for him, because the roster was full, they waived wide receiver Jason Brownlee, who wasn't seeing much action at all as it was, so hopefully he ends up on the practice squad, but Rice is officially back on the 53-man roster. With all that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on this very impressive win from the Chiefs. Who were your biggest standouts? If you had to give a game ball to one player on offense, defense, and special teams, who would they be and why? Let me know either way in the comments below, and until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?